Alex Honnold is overrated, let's just say it. Yeah, cheers. EpicTV, live and in person. That tastes like a long day at the office. Hi, my name is Cedar Wright, and I'm a longtime climber, filmmaker, and I am currently hanging out here in Ticino, Switzerland, and I came here to host or / MC this kind of ludicrous climbing event called the Red Bull Dual Ascent, and it's this 6-pitch race up the Berzoska Dam. It's a 6-pitch, multi-pitch climbing race, and we have some of the best climbers in the world, and I'm MCing and kind of hosting the event, and yeah, taking my first stab at being like a TV personality, so we'll see how that goes. Before I found climbing, I was a pretty lost soul. Just, drinking, doing a lot of drugs. I was in college and really sort of a deadbeat with just no passion and no real aim in life. And in my second year of college, I was going to school up in Northern California, and I was at the beach and I saw these people climbing on these sea cliffs. I just thought, that looks so amazing. Like, I'd like to do that. And my roommate happened to know a climber, and she introduced me to him, and I was like, oh man, I'd love to go out and climb if I could just get the opportunity. And so, yeah, this guy, Scotty Brown, took me out and introduced me to rock climbing. And my first rock climb, he gave me a pair of Boreal Aces, I think, some old school climbing shoes, and he was like, okay, try to walk up this like slab without using your hands. And so my first rock climb was like a no hands like slab climb. And soon I was hooked. I got just classic, right? You get chalk bag, climbing shoes, and a harness, and I never looked back. Climbing used to be for like adventurers and for like strong and hardy spirits, and now it's a bunch of like friggin' protein shake drinking, like calorie counting, fingerboard hanging friggin' knuckleheads. Yeah, it's travesty, man. No, I mean, I poke fun a little bit, but yeah, for sure. I mean, it's been wild to watch the way that climbing has evolved, and it really, I think for me was as much a lifestyle as it was a sport, and it was about being outdoors and about like being in beautiful places and having adventures and going into the unknown and suffering a little bit, and that type 2 fun. And now there is like, let's say probably the majority of climbers who predominantly climb in gyms, who if they do go outdoors want a pretty sterile and safe experience. They certainly don't want to be like run out on like some like Chaucy fist jams, looking at like a 30-foot whipper onto some marginal cams or whatever, They're just not real rock climbers. They're pretend climbers. I came from a creative background. I studied creative writing in college. I loved good stories, I loved reading. And so, yeah, I appreciated a good climbing tale, a tall tale. I used to love reading John Long. And then I just happened to be at a time in climbing at the advent of like, modern HD SLRs where suddenly you could have like, cinematic looking footage on this little tiny camera you could hold in your hands. And so I remember thinking that was really interesting. I started to mess around with it. I was like, I did photography during high school. I was like the photographer for our yearbook and stuff. And so that was just like, oh man, it'd be cool to like, start documenting my adventures a little bit. And I started there. And then I was like, got into iMovie, and taught myself to edit. And I made like a series of like atrociously terrible films that I'm embarrassed to admit exist. And but yeah, it was cool. I mean, at the same time, I'm proud of them because I worked hard to like figure out all the nuts and bolts of filmmaking. And I was just like excited to share my venture. I was also like trying to have a professional climbing career, and I could see that it would be helpful to be able to like bring back stories and like add some value to my sponsors and stuff. And so that's how it started. And at the same time, I was climbing with Renan Ozturk a bunch. And actually one of my like claims to fame is that I was like showed Renan Ozturk like how to like, edit in iMovie. And then like a year later, Renan was like, "Oh, check it out! I made like this film, and it got into the film festivals." And like the teacher became the pupil very quickly. And then Renan taught me how to use Final Cut. And then just like one thing led to another, and I started making movies. And eventually, I stopped making movies just about myself and my adventures, and started making movies about my friends and the things they were doing. And it became a way to make money too, which was as a dirtbag who'd been diving in dumpsters, I was like, oh, maybe I'll just dive in the corporate dumpster instead and get paid to make art, And so that's what I did. And I'm very proud of some of the films in the last 10 years that I've made. They've been featured in Real Rock, and it's been an interesting trajectory. And I love filmmaking. It's such a dynamic way to tell a story. Alex Honnold is overrated. Let's just say it.
Oh yeah.
Here we are.
Oh yeah.
Here we are.
Oh yeah.
We are.
Oh yeah.
Here we are.
Oh yeah.
Here we are.
Oh yeah.
It's actually kind of a crazy schedule.
I was lucky after some of my climbing expeditions to sign on as a North Face climbing team member, and that was what precipitated my whole ability to go on these climbing expeditions. And North Face funded all these amazing expeditions, and they brought on this like young kid, up and comer at the time, named Alex Honnold. And there was just this new young kid on the team, and I knew who he was from the Yosemite scene. I'd heard about him soloing the rostrum at the time and being like, oh wow, like we got a real bold kid in our hands. This is sort of unusual. Like, seems like some like Peter Croft level stuff is coming onto the scene. And so I immediately had a lot of respect for Alex as a climber. As a soloist myself, I have a tremendous amount of respect for what I consider the ultimate art form in climbing. And so we hit it off. We became fast friends, and we had the same sponsor. And so we came up with this idea after having done a trip to Chile together, and climbing in Cochimo together. We were like, oh man, maybe it'd be cool to do something like a little closer to home, but like human powered. Honnold was kind of getting on his environmental kick at that point, and so the idea of like not using motor vehicles and like using bicycles instead, and like having some sort of adventure, and we just were sort of throwing out ideas. And I was like, well man, it'd be cool to do like maybe some of the 14ers or something. And Honnold was like, well, what if we did them all by bike? And thus the Sufferfest was born. Just kind of maybe start a film.
It's time to begin the movie.
You start with that faint dream of like, someday I'd love to bike really far and climb stuff, and then eventually it like morphs into this concrete, like here's this goal that we are going to achieve.
We've basically taken kind of like the Alpine style dirtbag minimalism and then applied it to biking.
Our objective on this trip is to climb all the 14ers in California, all the 14,000 foot peaks, but we're trying to do them by bicycle.
We started up at Mount Shasta, and we biked our asses all the way down to the Sierra Nevada with zero idea what we were doing as far as bicycling goes. We destroyed our taints, destroyed our friggin' knees.
We should be there hopefully in 5 or 6 days. We've never road biked before. We've never done a bike tour. We had a lot of questions getting our bikes rigged up, and hopefully this all works, and hopefully we make it in good time.
Yeah.
And we had like an amazing adventure, and I just did a bunch of handheld storytelling along the way. Was lucky to have this young kid, Sam Crosley, hit me up and be like, hey, I'd love to come out and like shoot some interviews. And so he shot some interview footage, and we put that all together. And then at the time, EpicTV had a bunch of money, and so I was like, oh man, like we got this project, like let's do it. And so Sufferfest 1 was born. It's a film that I'm still really proud of. It's like it has that spirit of adventure. It has like that sense of humor that I hold dear to my heart.
24 miles in to day 2. I think you're wrong, but
I'm 100% sure that I'm right about this.
you can see what we did. We f***ed up. Day 3. My thighs are burned to a crisp. I should have put on sunscreen. Oh, it hurts.
Soloing is about eliminating one of the most expensive pieces of climbing equipment, the rope. So it's a cost-saving analysis, really. No, I'm totally joking. I mean, I came from that Yosemite culture of climbing, and Peter Croft was God to us. And I still really feel that Peter Croft is one of the greatest climbers of all time, and that what he accomplished was, incredible. Like free soloing the Astroman, I think is one of the most iconic rock climbs of all time. And so, yeah, I just have a tremendous amount of respect for that level of mental control and that ability to execute flawlessly. And also, I mean, like straight up just that commitment to the sport. You're like, I mean, there's nothing more committed than risking your life for climbing, and that's like some hardcore warrior stuff. It's a lot of people, man, they are so fixated on safety and on, like, oh my God, well, people are so concerned with like surviving at all costs, but like, what about like that old school badassery, Yeah, I became a search and rescue member, and so I saw some shit, man. I was there for body recoveries and there for really gnarly accidents, and yeah, I think just the way a paramedic has to kind of laugh at like the gnarliness of what they're experiencing. I learned to have a pretty good sense of humor. And yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the reasons that Honnold and I have had like a somewhat fruitful climbing partnership, is we both have that like morbid sense of humor and that ability to sort of, laugh in the face of death or whatever. But, just to like kind of like, be like totally getting beat down and yet find the humor in it. Because really it's hilarious. There's nothing more hilarious than getting your ass kicked.
Vlog 624, Mark 13. Today, we boldly went into unknown territory.
What's the quality of the dirt roads? Are they pretty smooth?
Dirt road's good. It's a total logging road. It's a good road.
We're on this dirt road. The last like 5 miles have been heinous.
Pack an entire large pizza into the wilderness on your bike.
The climbing world, do I still fit in? Yeah, I guess so. You know what I mean? I mean, probably I fit in because I, am willing to talk a little shit about all these like young punks, but at the same time, like have a lot of respect and love, and and watching the some of these World Cup climbers and just the level of athleticism. As much as I'm going to talk about how light duty they are because they don't have the balls, like at the same time, I actually have a tremendous amount of respect for just like how far the athleticism has come. And I have a deep love for climbing. Climbing saved my life. I have a love for climbers. I think that just as a community, it's an incredible community. And yeah, I build a moon board in my friggin' backyard. I like still train. I still care about staying strong. If I'm on a paragliding trip, I'm always going to whatever climbing gym there is and just checking out the funky scene. I was just in South Korea and going to like the weird little climbing gyms and just feeling the vibe of the climbing community and just like sort of taking it in, like just how much climbing has grown and in so many directions and so many disciplines, and people are specializing, and yeah, I'm very grateful to have had a career out of climbing, and excited to keep pushing it, and definitely looking forward to more climbing adventures, and also taking paragliding and climbing and putting them together into something unique, and maybe even push some limits still in my middle age.